Okay, starting up.
We are live already, right?
Yes.
Okay, check my. Oh yes. Okay.
Hey, Doc.
Hello, Dato.
Can hear?
Yeah, Ken. How are you, Dato?
Okay lah.
Okay.
So we're starting at 2, huh?
Yeah. I think all the panel members are here already.
Okay.
Ashura, Dr. Ashura, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you. Very good
Okay.
afternoon, everyone.
All right. And Shantini is also here. Hi, Shantini. Shantini, can you hear us? Yeah, she
Hi,
told
good afternoon.
Hi. Yeah, she told us that she's going to have a problem, right, Shantini, with your internet connection?
Hello, can you hear
Hello.
me?
Hi, Shantini. Can you
Yeah.
hear?
Hi. Yes, I can hear you all very clearly.
Okay. Okay, we'll be starting very, very soon. Where are you now, Dato? In KK?
I'm in KK right now, at home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, it's Saturday. I got no job right now, jobless. So anybody wants to offer me a job?
Yeah, boleh Dato be in our advisory panel to advise us on the environmental issue in the South China Sea.
But still need to cari makan lah.
We cannot afford to pay you lah, Dato.
Yeah lah. Doing this is my pleasure. No cost at all, but I still need to cari makan. Okay.
Okay, An. I think we can start.
Start, yeah? Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, very, very, very clear. You can see your handsome face there.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to SEED-SOC, Protecting Maritime Environment in the South China Sea. I'm Azwan and I will be your MC today. Ladies and gentlemen, in light of the pandemic, SEED's programs are now adjusting to online format in hopes of reaching more audience with current and important issues to be discussed and highlighted. For those who are new to SEEDS, a short background is needed. SEEDS, or with its full name, Society Empowerment and Economic Development of Sabah, is a non-governmental think tank dedicated to the ideal of creating a modern, moderate, and progressive society through research and outreach programs. Established in 2015, it has ventured into many research and programs throughout the years. Ladies and gentlemen, on today's program, we will be having a forum highlighting the issue of maritime environment in the South China Sea. Without me spilling everything, let me invite the program director today for his welcoming remark. Dr. Asri, the Zoom is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullah and good afternoon everyone. Thank you MC, our honorable chairman Dr. Arnold, our respected panelists and our esteemed audience. First and foremost, I would like to thank all of you again for being here today despite your busy schedule. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my colleague Dr. Rizal Zamani once told me that while he was doing a research on the fishermen in Kudat, the fishermen told him that they called these areas where they went for fishing the South China Sea as banderas. Kind of reminds me of a Hollywood actor who goes by the same name, Antonio Banderas. And then the fishermen also told him that banderas was no longer what it used to be. There was fewer fish and it was getting dirtier, crowded and even more dangerous by the day. You see, the narrative of the South China Sea, or banderas, for many years usually revolved on two things. Number one, territorial disputes, and number two, the huge economic potentials there, especially when one talks about the estimated 125 billion barrels of oil reserves and up to 900 trillion cubic feet of gas reserves. This is certainly huge because these figures, these estimated reserves for some country could mean 25 years of oil and gas supplies uninterrupted. Obviously, people are aware of these things. But what about the maritime environmental issues? Well, I have done a little experiment myself. If you type the word South China Sea into any one of your WhatsApp groups, you will mostly get to see lots of responses that touch on, again, the two things, the territorial disputes and the economic potentials. And you will see very few will touch on the environmental issues there. It is like they have not heard about overfishing or coral reefs destruction of the South China Sea. And this is what we are missing out today. The fact is that not many people are aware, or not that many people are interested of the maritime environmental issues of the South China Sea, even less on the livelihood of the fishermen, even less on the depleted fish supplies. Without realizing it, if we continue being this way, we will be part of the problems ourselves. But why is the lack of the awareness? Perhaps the words of coral reefs destruction or overfishing do not sound as sexy as the words of conflict, oil, and gas. So we have to do something about this. We have to start somewhere, anyhow. And that is why here at SITS we came up with this idea to organize a forum like the one we have today. We see it as part of our responsibility to draw people's attention, to raise people's awareness of the current environmental issues in the banderas, like pollution, overfishing, coral destruction, and oil spills, among other things. So here we are. We believe all of us will be able to learn and gain as much as possible from our experts today. These are fine people who are passionate about the well-being of the banderas. Of course, banderas of the South China Sea, not banderas directa. Out of this forum, we certainly hope that there will be more of us who will step up, be motivated, and be inspired to initiate or join in any efforts that seek to protect, that seek to preserve the well-being of banderas or the South China Sea. Let's together we play our part. With that, I conclude my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Asri, for that remark. Ladies and gentlemen, we now shall proceed with the first half of our program with Dr. Ashura Saleh. Dr. Ashura Saleh is the co-founder of Global Awareness and Impact Alliance, or otherwise known as GAIA. With her talk title of Preventing the Tyranny of the Commons, a regional perspective of fishery management, I would like to invite her to give her talk. The Zoom is yours, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Aswan. I'll wait for my slides to be pulled up. Thank you. Brilliant. Thanks so much. So a very good afternoon, everyone. It really is a great delight to be part of this forum and to really witness that we're having more and more discussions on the impact of our environment. Most of the discussions that I currently take place in is on the South China Sea, and most of these are focused on territorial disputes. And so this is despite the fact that I believe that environmental issues do have longer and sharper repercussions for our own regional security. Before I begin, of course, I'd like to extend my thanks to SEEDS and also Dr. Arnold Puyok and Dr. Asri for really inviting me to be part of this forum. Also extremely honored to be in the presence of such an esteemed panel. I'm looking forward to learning from them, to all the other speakers, especially from their on-the-ground and policy experience. So today my part will really be in looking into what we can do to better protect the fishery resources in our beloved maritime backyard, the South China Sea. This issue is actually one of the priority areas for us here in Gaia, the Global Awareness and Impact Alliance. We're an NGO based in Brunei. We publish work on maritime security, but interestingly enough, one of the work includes a policy paper that we're currently working on. And this is really looking into illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing in the Borneo Island. This is something we hope to release later on in the year, and there's also our QR code for more information on what we are doing. Next, please. Thank you. So I've titled my presentation here as the tyranny of the commons, really because I wanted to highlight how you, me, and really everyone else who calls Southeast Asia their home have all become victim to the massive scale at which we all employ poor fishing practices. I'll then look into what we have done to try stem the rate of our degrading fishery stocks. But then really, we ask ourselves, have we done enough for our environment? I'll uncover some initiatives that we have done and really call for more avenues that we can pursue to better engage more partners and preserve our resources for the next generation. Next, please. Thanks. So when we look at the South China Sea, it is really a maritime zone that is one of the very few remaining biologically diverse areas in the world. It's also home to, I think, roughly around 3,400 species of fish, also one of the world's top 5 most productive fishing zones. 12% of global fishing catch actually come from the South China Sea. And at any one point in time, the South China Sea is home to half of the world's fishing vessels. But how are we doing so far? How are we preserving this maritime environment that we rely so heavily on as a food source? Unfortunately, the South China Sea is also known for its indiscriminate fishing practices. We do know, there's a lot of cyanide bombing, large-scale trawling, violated license provisions, entering into foreign maritime territory, targeting protected species. The list goes on and on and on. And if we do continue with these practices, we just might fulfill the prediction that by 2050, global fishing stocks would collapse entirely. Next slide, please. And indeed, the rate at which we have been exploiting our fishery resources is extremely harrowing. Fish stocks fell by 66 to 75% in just over the last 20 years. Interestingly enough as well, the rate of fish catch is also declining. Back when we could catch 25 tons of fish for every 1,000 kilometers being traveled, now only 7 tons are being caught. And this is not because, we're having better fishing practices or we're more ecologically aware of the repercussions of our behavior at sea, but this is mainly because there is simply less fish out there. But it's not just our fish that is in jeopardy. We've got the habitat, the coral reefs, and these help renew these fishery resources to provide the safety, the plankton for the fish, and these are also disappearing. In the last 10 years, coral reefs have declined by 16% because of our fishing practices. Due to giant clam harvesting, dredging, artificial island building, around 160 square kilometers of coral reefs as of 2013, this was quite a while back, were recorded to have been destroyed. And here we can look into these two pictures, which is not a before and after picture really. It's a picture of the same reef in Pagasa Reef, one area which had been decimated by giant clam harvesting by choppers that just kind of do dredging across the coral reef, and the other side that hadn't been harmed in any way whatsoever. So when we look at COVID-19 as well, we would think that the pandemic would have at least played a role in, encouraging less IUU fishing, and we'd probably see a recovery of fishery stocks. But sadly enough, this was not the case. In fact, in the Philippines, around the period when lockdown measures were instituted in February last year, there were around 3,600 apparent commercial vessels in the Philippines municipal waters. When lockdown was instituted, this also coincided with a fishing period. And so the next month, this number of 3,600 escalated to 6,000 vessels within the Philippines municipal waters. It remains unclear if these vessels are foreign or local, but they do point to persistent commercial fishing vessels operating in significant marine protected areas, especially in the Palawan waters and the Tikau Burias Pass, which is just off Sabah actually. Next slide, please. But how does IUU fishing impact regional stability? And this is where the real tyranny takes place. I think earlier Dr. Asri spoke about fishing nationalism. And indeed, especially in recent months, such as the Natuna Sea incident between Indonesia and China, IUU fishing is increasingly seen as amplifying the South China Sea territorial disputes. We've got fishing nationalism tactics that are increasingly being used. And this includes accompanying fishing vessels with Coast Guard ships, or equipping these ships, these Coast Guard ships, with machine guns. All these tactics are being used to assert territorial sovereignty in the exclusive economic zones. But what we need to remember is that IUU fishing was a problem for the South China Sea way before the South China Sea became a contentious zone between major powers and claimant states. And so if we continue to associate the fishery crisis with these territorial disputes, what we are doing is also using sovereign-based norms and sovereign-based approaches to manage the fishery crisis. But the nature of fish is migratory and fluid. Fish don't have passports, that they need before entering another country's EEZ. And so because of this, if we overexploit our fishery resources in one EEZ, we prevent the fish from reproducing and migrating to another exclusive economic zone. And so what this does is that it then jeopardizes the food security of our regional neighbor. Currently, the fishing nationalism tactics that are being employed do very, very little to solve our fishery crisis, because these measures are all structured around state competition and not regional cooperation. And the second way that IUU fishing can really jeopardize regional stability is through the associated transnational crimes. IUU fishing provides a vehicle for other crimes that also require a fishing boat and also require a crew that is familiar with the region's waterways. So if we look beyond IUU fishing, we can see that at times some fishermen and some boats are also involved in drug trafficking, migrant smuggling, and even piracy and armed robbery. In fact, if you were to look at the Straits of Malacca, just along the Andaman Sea, there are a lot of cases in where fishermen are being employed by drug syndicate networks in order to go out and grab the methamphetamine consignment from a boat and bring it back to the coastline. But there are reasons, right, why fishermen would want to be part of these transnational crimes. And this is because of the third point. Maritime security is an extension or even an indicator of developments that take place on land. Fishermen are resorting to these illegal practices because of various reasons that are found on land. And these factors affect coastal communities. They can be the unequal distribution of resources, low levels of education, insufficient capacity to implement regulation, or just not enough enforcement assets. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so we've looked into what we can do, what the drivers are behind IUU fishing, but what has the region done so far? We've pursued an array of initiatives. Obviously, we've got joint initiatives. There's a Turtle Heritage Island, which I know is between Philippines and Malaysia, which is a joint conservation area. I mean, it'd be really interesting to learn more on this. There are also marine protected areas. Currently, there are 130 or so that exist in non-disputed areas. We also have multilateral organizations. We have the Asia Pacific Fishery Commission. We have the Southeast Asian Fisheries Development Center. And these organizations work across the region to produce valuable scientific research. But the thing is that these organizations also fall short of becoming a regional fishery management organization, or an RFMO, because they are not legally binding and they do not come with enforcement measures to moderate the exploitation of fishery resources. Then there are bilateral projects as well. These are projects that take place between countries. We've got China and Vietnam, for example, and their Gulf of Tonkin fishery agreement, built to preserve fishing in shared fishing zones. Then there is also the use of technology. More and more fishing vessels are being encouraged to use AIS, automated identification systems. So other organizations like the Global Fishing Watch will be able to keep track of any irregular behavior by fishing vessels. Then there is the attempt to want to encourage more sustainable consumption. The Marine Stewardship Council is releasing certifications for this to encourage an awareness of sustainable seafood. I think what's important as well is the growing momentum for more stakeholder engagement initiatives. There is the Sea Change Ignite that involves multi-stakeholders like the government, the industry, civil society, all planned around trying to address human rights abuses in the seafood supply chain. There is also Indonesia's Ikan project. This is another multi-stakeholder effort. Excuse me, but I'm not really sure of the progress of this project for a while. Next slide, please. Thank you. So clearly in our region, we have some tools and we do have the foundation for stronger regional fishery management. But what more do we need to do? Clearly, stronger governance tools are needed. And the tools that we use cannot be based on sovereign norms. Rather, the tools that we use do have to be evidence-based. There needs to be strong research and also a shared awareness to want to revive our fishery stocks. Dr. Asri spoke about political willingness, for example, just now. But more than anything, we need to learn to detach the fishery crisis away from any political or strategic agenda. Secondly, there needs to be a greater level of transparency. And this can be facilitated by organizations like the Global Fishing Watch through the use of technology and satellite tracking data. But there is also a need for more stakeholder engagement, and this is the key. IUU fishing isn't just the responsibility of enforcement agencies. All sectors of society need to be engaged in this as well. And the main motivation behind these stakeholder initiatives is an awareness of the gravity of the fishery crisis and the need to generate more accountability across all communities. A whole of sector approach is needed, not just in focusing on IUU fishing, but also in other transnational crimes as well. And if you participate in a lot of the regional discussions, many of them talk about the need for more maritime enforcement. But this does not necessarily have to mean that we need to build our armada a lot more. Rather, we need a platform without any geopolitical implications that will help us work towards pursuing common maritime security interests. There's a lot of talk on information sharing concepts and how that can be incorporated with our current maritime command centers and where maritime domain awareness fits into this. And this is something we can definitely talk about later. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so the tragedy of the commons is a dilemma that we have actually afflicted upon ourselves, primarily because of the way we have mismanaged this fishery crisis. By prioritizing national self-interest over the future of our fishery resources, what we have done is that we have placed IUU fishing in the same arena as territorial disputes. And so it is important to remind ourselves that our fishery crisis actually originated from completely different factors. And these factors are most often linked to the basic need for more income and more food security. As demonstrated, we already have the tools at our disposal to achieve sustainable fishery management. All that is needed is more awareness and more commitment from our region stakeholders to protect our environment. By doing this, I hope we may just prevent this tragedy of the commons and instead together reap the benefits of the shared environment. I want to thank you very much for your attention. I do look forward to the discussion later on. I've left my email address here if you'd like to reach out to me for any reason. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shura Saleh, for that talk just now. Just to put in facts, Dr. Asri Saleh and Dr. Ashra Saleh are not related. Yeah? Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed, I would just like to inform you that we have provided an online form for the evaluation of this program. Therefore, we kindly invite you to fill them up for improvements in the future. The link is available in the comment section below. Yeah? Now we will proceed with the second half of the program. I now hand over the program to Dr. Arnold Puyok as a forum moderator. The Zoom is yours, Doctor, and the panelists. Have a good one.
Yep. Thank you, An. Once again, I would like to welcome everyone to this forum. Thank you to those also who are joining us live through our Facebook page. Joining us to discuss the topic of the forum are three very distinguished panel members. I regret to inform everybody that Dr. Sri Anifah cannot make it today due to his other urgent commitment. But surely we'll get Dr. Anifah to speak on the topic whenever Dr. Anifah is free next time. Our first panel member is Datuk Pang Yuk Ming. Everybody knows Datuk Pang. So he is a very well-known politician in Sabah. How are you, Datuk? Datuk Pang Yuk Ming is the former Assistant Minister of Tourism, Culture and Environment. Our second analyst is Shantini Gunarajan, who is currently the Marine Policy Manager with WWF Malaysia. Hello, Shantini. Welcome to this forum. And of course, our third panel member is Dr. Ashura Saleh, who has just presented a very thought-provoking paper on fishery management in the South China Sea. Before we begin, let me just remind our panel members once again that this forum will be divided into three parts. So we have the first round, second round, third round. So during the first round, each of the panel member will be speaking, will be focusing on the topic of the forum for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then during the second round, I will pose questions to each of the panel member based on any key points or issues that you raise in your presentation. And the third round will be a Q&A. So I would like to encourage our participants who are outside, who are following us, to pose any question to the panel members related to their topic and issues or any points that they raise. You can also give your comments, but in doing so, please observe proper decorum. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all panel members, the topic that we are going to discuss today is very pertinent, simply because it touches on something that is not well known among many people, as mentioned by Dr. Asri just now. Because when we talk about the South China Sea, we usually picture a conflict among the claimant countries over the sovereignty of the South China Sea. Now, this is not difficult to understand because when you look at the graphics shown on your screen, can you show the graphic, Priscilla? South China Sea is not only rich in natural resources, but also in marine life. I think Dr. Asri has talked about this just now. It's estimated that in the South China Sea alone, there are 11 billion barrels of oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. In terms of fishing, the yearly catch in the South China Sea is 16.6 million tons, and there are also more than 3,000 known species of fish in the South China Sea. But the forum today is not to focus on the conflict or on the disputes, but on something that many people do not really aware of. That is the environmental pollution in the South China Sea. So the forum is not only interested in raising awareness about the environmental pollution in the South China Sea, but also about what we can do as a group or as an individual to protect the maritime environment in the South China Sea. That is the reason why we get people like Dr. Ashura to perhaps share with us later more about the action plan in terms of how we can raise more awareness so that more and more people know about the environmental pollution in the South China Sea. Now, before we go to the forum, may I also share with you this graphic about the types of pollution in the South China Sea. I'm sure all of you are aware, but it's just that to share this to our audience. These are the types of pollutions in the South China Sea: overfishing, as mentioned by Dr. Ashura, land-based pollution, sea-based pollution, plastic waste pollution, and so on and so forth. So, without further ado, I would like to invite Datuk Pang first to speak on the topic. If you are ready, Datuk, so you have between 10 to 15 minutes to share your thoughts, to share your perspective on the topic. Over to you, Datuk.
Thank you so much, esteemed panels, colleagues, friends who are listening. Hi, everybody. How's life? First of all, I'd like to say a big congratulations to Dr. Azura for presenting such a informative presentation that she have given us, having an inside look at what is happening, especially when it comes to the fishing management of South China Sea. As we all know, as she's put it, the stock is depleting fast. And what can we, as a state or as a state in Sabah, have to do about it? I know that the environment pollution that is happening in South China Sea, other than the it being one of the heavily troubled traffic shipping lane, and also the explorations of oil and gas that was mentioned that is ongoing, the dispute over it, the pollutions, which are some of them are land-based, some of them are sea-based. I would like to share with you all more towards what we can do as a state, as the people of Sabah, to contribute to this issue at hand. I think let's begin by sharing my experience. Like when I was the Assistant Minister of Tourism, way back in about 5-6 years ago, together with Datuk Seri Masidi, we started a program, or we initiated a program called the Blue Ocean Initiative. That was back in 2017. Sabah actually was one of the, if not the first state or government bodies in Asia to vocally or in public, state in public, our support for the United Nations 2015 policies on maritime. 2015 means that by the year 2020, 15% of our waters over Sabah is to be protected. Back then, when we started this initiative, we have about in the region about slightly less than 10%. And through the progress of some of the agency that was involved, and through the some friends in NGOs, and everybody that is very concerned about the environment, we will manage to raise this to about 11 to 12% over the last couple of years. But in recent, as late as last year, I was been informed that the United Nations has changed its policies to 30-30. Means by the year 2030, it requires or encourage nations to designate 30% of the land or 30% of the sea in their territory to be marine parks or to be protected area. Now, why do we need to do that? I think it's very important in the sense of to safeguard what we have, especially in Sabah. As everybody knows, Sabah is one of the eco destination that is famous not only around the world, but in marine, but also in forest conservations. In terms of marine, we are well known for Sepadan, yeah, Sepadan, one of the Sepadan area, one of the last paradise when it comes to diving and the beauty of nature undersea. Now, what we did under the Blue Ocean Initiative back then was that we not only setting aside our commitment to the United Nations 2015 policies, but we also reach out to other NGOs on how we can go about reaching that objective. Realizing that we, the government back then, can set policies, but if it doesn't benefit to the people, I think any policies you set that does not include any of the stakeholder is doomed for failure. Some of the problems that we had back then is that other than setting it, creating all these national parks that we have, like the real latest is Tun Mustafa Park up north, we also created problems for our people, especially fishermen. You guys just now mentioned that there was a survey done up north where people are finding it is getting hard to make a living, and to make a living through fishing, and they have turned to easier venues in order to feed their families. And by the easier venues or easier method to fish, undoubtedly that we see a lot is happening in Sabah is to fish bomb. fish bombing has created a lot of damage to our corals, which is the bedrock of what marine life is. Corals in Malaysia, especially in Sabah, is on depleting mode. But over the last few years, we are very lucky because in Sabah, we have a lot of people that is getting interest or having a higher awareness on environment and all the environment issues, especially in maritime environment issues. We have groups out there that is trying to replant corals, to save corals and all this. So now looking at one point is that to encourage or to help our people to stop the activity on fish bombing, we have to provide alternative for them in order to make a living. How do we do that? Under the Blue Ocean Initiative, we thought of encouraging people to do fish farming. Fish farming, I think, is a way for the future. In order to be over-reliant on the fish stock that we have in the oceans, what we can do is that we can encourage more fish farm to produce the quantity or the quantity of fish that we need to feed our people. The demand of fish will always be there, and with the numbers of people increasing, especially in countries, big countries that with heavy populations, there will be a lot of demand for fish. Now, fish farming is a very sustainable way to feed our people. The government, we should encourage the government to do more on this front, to help the private sector. There's a couple of private sector that is doing that, but with not much assistance, or very some assistance, but not enough assistance from the government. They are not doing a very successful job. In order to promote fish farm and things like that, we need the fishery department to engage NGOs and local sectors, and such as our local communities, to draw a roadmap on how we can plan for the next 5 or 10 years, to invest into this efforts. We'll take commitment from everybody. On the other hand, we also need to promote, like what I did, like what we did back then, a couple of years back. I heard of this. There was a group of people from Hong Kong. I would just like to share this. A group of Hong Kong people who start a promotion by encouraging the hotels to consume seafood that is farmed sustainably. This idea was thrown out, and they're doing a good job in Hong Kong right now, where all the 5-star hotels sign on this program, whereby they only purchase seafood from sustainable farms. In Sabah, a couple of years back, I think some of the NGOs have picked up on these ideas, but it's not heavily promoted. But we still need to do a lot of promotion on this, encouraging our people to have to eat or buy more fish farms other than ocean farms, ocean sea fishes. Ladies and gentlemen, our environment is very important for us. There's a lot of things that we need to do to do it, to get it and on the right path. Like it or not, all stakeholders must play a part. The government actually plays a very important part in all this, to make regulations, to give assistance, and to work with NGOs, to reach out to the people, to educate them, to become environment friendly. If we look at some of the NGOs, I would like to congratulate some of the NGOs that we have right now. They're putting a lot of efforts, getting a lot of resources from international friends to guide or to steer Malaysia, especially Sabah, to be more responsible for its environment, both at sea and on land. I'm glad to say that Sabah, I'm proud to be a Sabahan, because Sabah is on both fronts, sea and land, doing a marvelous job. We are better off than any anybody around the region. We are ahead of a lot of people, and I've got a lot of friends in the NGO and the environment department and the environment circle that keep on telling us that Sabah is heading on the right direction, but we need to do more because Sabah has so much to save. We got so much to save. We have a lot of efforts ahead, and we need everybody to be on board. It's forums like this. I would like to congratulate SITS because it's forum like this that create awareness. No doubt it's a bit slow in reaching out to people, especially in times of on the COVID environment and things like that. But efforts like this will build momentums. We need to go out to the people, especially the young generations, to get them to be involved, to get them to be more knowledgeable of the environment issues that we have and the impact that we have on the people, on the next generation and the generations to come. Sabahans are nice people. We are very accommodating people. I'm sure with the right info and the right approach, we can get our people to be environment conscious and to live in an environment responsible way in the future to come. As you all know, there's a lot of efforts that's been happening. I would like to take this small opportunities to just thank everybody on the panel, especially on all the NGOs that is involved. I got a good friend who's now heading the Stop Fish Bombing activities that's now doing some works in Sampona, installing about 20 listening devices undersea to detect fish bombing. Their target is to do about 250 to 300 devices installed throughout Sabah waters to protect or to detect any fish bomb activities that is happening in Sabah, and hopefully that with other efforts like encouraging our people to reduce their dependency on fish bombing, we can eradicate this problem once and for all. On the last issue I would like to mention is that it's easy for a lot of us who are well off, we are comfortably well off, to talk and raise issues on environment. But when we do this, we have to put our shoes into those who are living day by day. It's easy for example, it's easy for me to talk about fish bombing, to eradicate fish bombing, the problem of fish bombing and all this that is destructive to the coral reef. It's dangerous for the people, it's dangerous for the users, it's, things like that. It could be harmful, you can cause death and things like that. But to a guy who has maybe 5-6 mouths to feed at home, who relies on him to bring home food to feed them, it's totally different. To them, what is important is the family, the livelihood of the family, and for them to get enough food for the family. They would not be in the right mindset to think about, what is going to happen in the environment, how dangerous is this activity is like. So in order to overcome this kind of situation, we must, what I like to call, not only show them the stick, but we also have to dangle the carrot. That's why back then, under the Blue Ocean Initiative that we have laid out, I'm so disappointed that the government after hours did not really put efforts to it. Now we laid out plans whereby we engage these people to slowly go into fish farming, to educate them to go into fish farming, and to show them why fish farming can be as a better alternative for them to feed the family. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I want to share. As you all know, I am a politician. Way back then, my field in environment issues is not that in depth, but it's something that I'm very passionate about. And I believe that for us to be successful in protecting our environment, we need all sectors, not only the people, not only NGOs, the community, but also the government to be heavily committed to this. The issues on South China Sea, the dispute on South China Sea is something that we, I think, as a state, will not be able to, I'll say, have a word on, not for us to have a word on, but let's work on to something that we can do to assist environment, like cut pollution, take care of our rubbish. This plastic is a major importance to us to, it's one of the main polluters to us. Now, find out ways where we can cut out on this, global warming is another issue that we can teach our people, that we can assist in helping. Responsible consumption, especially on seafood, is something that we should look at. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. I'd like to thank everybody for giving me this opportunity just to say a few words.
Yeah.
And I look forward
you
to
raised a lot of good points.
Yes.
You raised a lot of good points. I've received some comments and questions already, which I will direct to you later.
Okay, sure.
During our next session on the Q&A.
Yeah, sure.
Very interesting. You talk about fish bombing and then try to relate it with the livelihood of the people. That is a very interesting point because, as you said, from our side, we think it as something that shouldn't be done in the first place. But then when we look at them, well, they have to survive. We cannot say maybe from their side it's okay to do it, but from our perspective, it is something that shouldn't be done in the first place. I think Dr. Ashura may want to respond to that later during our discussion in Q&A. So, okay, Shantini, if you are ready, you can share your perspective, Shantini, on the topic of the forum.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Can you unmute yourself, Shantini?
Hi. Good.
Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you now.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you so much.
We understand that you have to you have problem with your video, right?
Yes, because my internet connection isn't very strong. So,
Okay.
Can you hear me?
It's okay. We just want to make sure that it's the real Shantini.
Yes, it is the real Shantini. I verify. You'll have to take my word for it.
Okay. Go ahead, Shantini. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arnold and Seeds, for inviting WWF and myself on behalf of WWF for this very important forum. Is my slides up? Priscilla?
Yep.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone. And I thought I would just give a very broad view on some of the issues and some of the opportunities with respect to addressing pollution through better governance in South China Sea. And from a bird's eye view, we live in a blue planet which contributes not only very significantly from an economic point of view, because it collectively has a GDP of over 25 trillion US dollars, but it is also very important because it's part of the lungs of our society and humanity. About 50% of our oxygen comes from the oceans. It's also a very important carbon sink. We're talking about climate change. The oceans play a very important role in regulating our climate. They are our air conditions, they sequester carbon. And of course, it's also very rich with biodiversity and resource for exploitation, be it fisheries, oil and gas, and other forms of pharmaceutical-based research. Next slide, please, Priscilla. Unfortunately, I'm going to introduce you to yet another tragedy of the commons. Dr. Azura has already alluded to the ghost which is in the monsters in our seas, which is the IUU fishing, the overfishing that is robbing our seas. But now instead of robbing our seas, we are actually inserting an artificial element into our oceans. That is by saying that at every minute, at least one garbage truck full of plastics is entering our oceans. Dato' Pang has also alluded to this problem of plastic pollution. So South China Sea is not excluded from this problem. Priscilla, can I have the next slide, please? So this slide shows you the global distribution of plastic waste in the world. You can see that there's a very high concentration in Asia as well as in South China Sea. The sad fact is that about 5 of the top 10 countries that have mismanaged plastics are located in Asia, and all these 5 countries have access to South China Seas. So the waste, the top 5, out of the top 10, 5 countries in the world which are very well known for mismanaging plastics are actually contributing to it, and they all have access to the South China Sea. Next slide, please, Priscilla. So what is plastics doing to our environment, society, and economy? It's creating massive disruptions to wildlife. It's creating massive disruption to livelihoods, as well as it's also disrupting ecological functions. So from the wildlife perspective, the South China Sea is abundant with biodiversity in terms of wildlife. We have turtles, we have mammals, and all these species are very vulnerable to plastic pollution, and they can be killed, and they can be suffocated from the impacts of plastics. We also have plastics invading food systems such as our seafood. So Dato' Pang emphasized a lot of the shift to aquaculture. Maybe it's not just overfishing that's going to drive us towards fish farming. It could also be contamination of fish through microplastics. And Malaysia and Asia in general are one of the highest seafood consuming nations in the world. So we are now increasingly vulnerable to contamination of microplastics through consumption of seafood. The studies is still growing with respect to the health impacts of consuming plastics. And there's a study that WWF had done to indicate that Malaysians, people generally are consuming at least 1 credit card worth of plastics on a weekly basis. That's how much of plastics that have infiltrated our air, soil, and marine and food systems. And from a community and livelihood perspective, plastic pollution is a problem because it creates inequity in society. The person who pollutes the most may not feel the impact as a person who's living in a coastal area. So for example, if you go to the islands of Sabah, you would see abundance of plastics, but the communities that reside there may not be necessarily using the most number of plastics, but they have to face the environmental and social costs arising from plastics. So this is actually not a local problem, a national problem, it's a global problem. We have to put in place measures within local and national governance frameworks, but we also have to address this from a global perspective, because rubbish from other parts of the water body, just as how Dr. Azura had said, fish do not need a passport to travel from one EEZ to another. Plastic waste also doesn't need similar passport to travel. It's free flowing from one ocean to another. So next slide, please, Priscilla. Thank you. So now I'm just going to give a snapshot of a context of the South China Sea. We've already heard about the bio-D concentration in South China Sea, and there's also a recent study in 2015-2016 that came out to say that South China Sea has one of the highest concentrations of corals as well. More than 500 species of corals have been identified, and this is touted to be comparable to the Coral Triangle. If most of you may be familiar with Coral Triangle, where Sabah's Kudat waters and Sipadan waters, the Sulu-Sulawesi seascapes, form part of the Coral Triangle, which is deemed to be one of the most biodiverse regions in the world for its marine ecosystems. But South China Sea, as rightly pointed out by the keynote speaker, as well as Dr. Arnold, a lot of studies have been emphasizing on conflict rather than the benefits, the richness, the biodiversity, and the environmental strengths of the region. Hence, even research and scientific data aggregation and collection has been weak, has been less. So there is need to galvanize the need for environmental research, joint research in the region. And just an interesting fact, keynote speaker was talking about how if you put a search term, and you would see that more information would arise relating to conflict in South China Sea rather than environment. The RSIS Institute in Singapore actually came up with a study where they studied media pieces between 2009 and 2016. And during that duration, they actually identified over 8,000 news articles reported on conflict in South China Sea. Can you take a guess how many articles was produced on environmental issues in the South China Sea? 25. So you see that.
25.
Yes.
Published in?
This RSIS, Nanyang University, is it?
Oh,
yeah, so the Raja something institute. Yeah, it's RSIS.
The 25 papers are published in.
It's a media.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so from a media perspective, 8,000 over coverage for conflict, but only 25 with respect to environmental issues in South China Sea. So that's the range of the issue. So you see the biodiversity value, you see the importance of fisheries that Dr. Azra has also explained. It's one of the top 5 fisheries grounds in the world, but it's now having issues and ramifications from overfishing. It's got plastics issues, and it's got also habitat degradation. Now, can I please move to my next slide? Thank you, Priscilla. So these are just some broad governance issues and opportunities that we have before us and that we need to leverage upon. And it's as all the speakers before have already identified, there's no single one party that is to be responsible. Everybody needs to be accountable and responsible. And at the international level, there are 2 major discussions happening at the moment. One is with respect to plastic pollution. So under the United Nations framework, Secretariat and so forth, they have identified that there is a huge gap in terms of global governance, that there is no single comprehensive international legal framework to address the problem of marine plastic pollution. See, in comparison, like how we have a global framework for climate change, there is none for plastic pollution. And this is an escalating problem because plastic production is on the rise. With COVID, there's also exceeding plastic production and plastic use. So the idea is not to phase out plastics, but the idea is to regulate towards eliminating unnecessary plastics and bringing plastics into a more circular economy so that we can prevent leakage into the environment. So there are a lot of discussions going on, and like from WWF's perspective, we are hoping that countries would support the negotiation mandate during the next Environmental Assembly at United Nations, which would be next February, to support the negotiation of a new legally binding instrument to address marine plastic pollution. At the moment, over 2/3 of the United Nations members, so over 100 countries, have either expressly said that they support that there should be a global agreement, or they said, yes, we need to explore the creation of such an instrument. And in this region, Vietnam and Philippines are 2 of the countries that are strongly advocating for such an agreement to come into play. The second instrument that's being negotiated, this has already gone into the negotiation phase. It's something called an internationally legally binding instrument to govern biodiversity beyond national jurisdictions. So we have international law to govern the oceans, but there has been identified a gap for conservation measures in the high seas, in the international waters, that is to say waters beyond EEZs of countries. So I believe that there are also pockets of international waters, high seas within the South China Sea, which would benefit from a similar regime, as well as the larger high seas. All the countries who are littoral states of the South China Seas, we do venture beyond our EEZ, and it's equally important that biodiversity beyond our EEZ is conserved. So these are just the 2 ongoing discussions at the international level. Moving on to the national lens. Now, Funnily enough, when we look at South China Sea as a whole, about 2/3 of Southeast Asia is actually water, and only a third is land. And that's almost a similar ratio for Malaysia. Yet at the national level, there is actually no department or institution that oversees the overall interest and coordination for ocean-related governance in Malaysia. So if we look at SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, I believe Datuk Pang was referring to this, how Sabah came up to be very supportive for the high-level political forum back in 2015, 2017. And Sabah had also registered a couple of commitments towards SDG 14, life below water. And in one of the targets for life below water, SDG 14, is to address pollution, but another more important target, I believe, is 14.2, which talks about the overall sustainability of our oceans using an ecosystems approach. Now, we have committed to this SDG 14 and all these different targets, but at present, the governance landscape in Malaysia, like global, it's very fragmented. So we have fisheries looking after fisheries, we have Department of Environment looking at environment. We have town and country planning looking at some elements of spatial planning within a very restricted manner. But there is no cohesiveness and coordination measure. We have a National Land Council which looks at the overall coordination of land issues, but again, there is no similar focal coordinating mechanism or a policy. Something to what Dr. Pang was saying, that they had launched the Blue Ocean Initiative for Sabah. So it's very progressive that a state had come up with such an initiative, but Malaysia as a maritime nation does not have such a score, such a document, a guiding document or a policy to build sustainably, to chart the way for better ocean governance, for sustainable management of our seascape. So that's one of the gaps. And we're looking at mainstreaming ocean conservation through state, local, and national policies. So we have policies. We can have, say, our state structure plan. We can have our national physical plan. How far are we going to the extent of using these documents to incorporate environmental considerations, which means we have to put in place monitoring mechanisms. Are we monitoring the right parameters when it comes to our ocean health? Are we monitoring the extent to which implementation of policies and laws are happening within our marine sphere? So these are things which we need to work on and strengthen. We have existing laws, some of which are good. Of course, there are gaps, but even the ones which are good, we need to ensure that there is implementation and there is accountability. So then I'm moving on to business and society. So when we say whole of society, let's just take from what, again, Dato Pang and all the previous speakers were talking about, that it's not just a single entity that's responsible. Everybody needs to play their part. Transparency and accountability are key components across businesses. NGOs also need to be accountable, governments, institutions, and so forth. But responsible practices, this is something that, for example, in the plastics case, how can we internalize the cost of the environmental externality that is resulted through the production of plastics? So one of the initiatives that WWF is working in collaboration with key government stakeholders is trying to introduce a concept called extended producer responsibility. This is in a way trying to get the polluter to pay. So if you introduce a product, you need to be responsible and accountable to ensure that throughout the life cycle, it will be captured within a system that does not leak into the environment and pollute the environment. So there are various initiatives that the government, civil society, and businesses are doing, not just for plastics, but for a lot of other things. And this would fall under the large umbrella of sustainable consumption and production practices. So we want sustainable fisheries, we want sustainable aquaculture, but again, there are guidelines that need to be developed, adhered to, and it needs to be monitored. We want sustainable consumptions, but we are not wasteful in terms of how we recycle or don't recycle, or how we over-consume either seafood or even plastics. So there needs to be a balance that's maintained. So these are just some of the broad concepts that I thought I'll share within this 10-15 minutes. I'm happy to take questions later on. If I can have my final slide, just a wee bit about WWF Malaysia. So we are a conservation-based NGO established in 1972, and we are present in all 3 regions of Malaysia. So there's something that South China Sea is something very special for Malaysia because it's like the common denominator for all 3 regions. We like to say, oh, Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah, Sarawak, we are all quite different, but we are all still Malaysia. But South China Sea is the one common denominator that all 3 regions share, and WWF is present in all 3 regions. We have a range of land and marine-based programs. We are working on turtle conservation in the South China Sea, on the Terengganu side, and we are also working closely with key agencies in Sabah towards identifying more areas for protection at sea. And we are also looking at measures to reduce bycatch of key threatened species such as cetaceans as well as turtles in Sarawak as well as in Terengganu. So those are just some of the initiatives, and we are also working on trying to eliminate plastics from our environment. That's all for now. Thank you so much once again for this opportunity. Back to you.
Thank you, Shantini, for your presentation. Now we have come to the next stage of the forum, which is the discussion, or rather questions from the moderator to each of the panel members. But before we go to this session, Priscilla, are you ready with the video? This video that we want to share with everyone, because the points raised in the video are quite related to what I want to ask to each of the panel members. Priscilla, if you are ready, you can play the video.
Okay.
Thank you, Priscilla. I would like to thank this local NGO. They call themselves the local champion, for producing this video and for allowing us to play this video in this forum. Um, the points raised in the video just now are quite related to my question, and I want to pose this question to Shantini, because Shantini, I'm sure you involve a lot in policy, in the formulation of policy, right, with regards to environment, things like that. You see, a lot of people are asking in terms of the enforcement of environmental pollution or enforcement of the law in South China Sea. A lot of people are asking in terms of which laws are relevant. That's number one, and who are going to enforce this law, and perhaps what are the challenges that we are facing in terms of enforcing this law, so that the countries that are involved are not only taking responsibility, but they know that South China Sea is not just the responsibility of one country, but it is the responsibility of everybody in the region. Once again, I would like to reiterate, in terms of the law, challenges in enforcing the law related to environmental pollution in the South China Sea. Dr. Shantini.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arnold, for that question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So now when we look at pollution in the South China Sea, again, I'll go back from what I said just now, that governance starts from the local to the state to the national and the international level. So at the local level, you have all your districts and local authorities. So you would have your local government act and the equivalent acts in the different regions of Malaysia, which require a certain level of management of their local jurisdiction. So that needs to be enforced. At the state level, similarly, there would be state laws because state jurisdiction includes state waters. So the states which face the South China Sea, they would be accountable for the respective state laws. At the national level, you have the territorial waters and the exclusive economic zones. So at the moment, the exclusive economic zone in Malaysia, the governing law is the EEZ Act of 1984, I believe. And under this act, the Department of Environment is identified as the line agency in charge of the preservation of the marine environment. So there are, the accountability lies with some of those institutions. Then if we go to the international level, the problem with pollution is very hard to pinpoint the source. For example, let's just say marine plastic pollution. It's very hard to pinpoint one country as the source because the currents carry plastics. But then if we talk about environmental destruction, there is the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea, where disputes can be brought before them and it can be resolved. If it's shipping related, so there are measures under the International Maritime Organization that can also take on to arbitrate some of the cases related to shipping related disputes. And also then there is arbitration, which is alternative legal dispute measures, which can be used to resolve legal issues arising from a two-party contractual obligation that has been failed. So then all these laws come together to help protect the environment. But the challenge, as I said earlier, it's again accountability. The challenge is also with respect to enforceability. The fact that we have a law in place, if it's not well designed, if we do not have sufficient resources in or technology in building a strong case, the case can fall even before it goes to the state of being enforced or being adjudicated. So it's a full process. You can have the laws, but you need the people, you need the technology, you need to have a strong system for evidence gathering and presenting a case to make it truly enforceable. Another key component, I believe, is also access to justice. Now, in many countries around the globe, around the world, environmental rights, the right to a clean and healthy environment, the right to nature has been constitutionalized. How this actually helps is because it activates access to justice for the citizens and for local NGOs to actually bring cases to entities that are violating those laws. At the moment, it's a challenge because the legal system doesn't clearly recognize such rights. So that arm of enforcement, like how we say some form of, I think Dr. Azura earlier was talking about one of the NGO globally being a watchdog. So the accountability can be restored also through access to justice if sufficient provisions are made for segments of society to help bring those laws to be enforced. I hope that provides a broad picture. Thank you, Dr. Arnold.
Yeah, thank you, Shantini. The second question is to Dr. Pang. Because Dato, you mentioned about the role of Sabah's government. It's quite commendable what Sabah did when you were the assistant minister. But as Shantini said just now, when we look at South China Sea is like our backyard, and this backyard is being shared by many countries, and it's difficult for us to like pinpoint anyone in terms of environmental pollution. And also, as Shantini mentioned, it is a global problem. It is a regional problem. It's not just our problem. So Dato', based on your experience in the past, how successful are we in trying to get other countries to work together with Malaysia in protecting the environment in the South China Sea? And what should we do more in terms of convincing other countries to work together with Sabah or with the federal government in protecting the marine life in the South China Sea?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. What can we do to assist in this global problem, especially when we are just a state? Okay, I will look at it this way. You know, the famous Kennedy's words saying that ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. So along with that line, first of all, we have to look at ourselves. We must make sure that we as a state exemplified social consciousness, environment consciousness, that we care for our environment, show other people that we are doing what we talk about. Now we walk the talk. So if we are not doing that, it's very hard for us to go and tell other people saying like, hey, come on, let's do this, do that, or whatever it is. People who look at us in one kind and say, hey, you solve your own problem before you come and talk to us. So for that, in that stance, I think Sabah for the last so many years has been moving along the right path, slowly moving along the right path. But what we need right now is that in terms of maritime environment issues, we need the government to step forward and take the lead, take control of the situation. When we first started the Blue Ocean Initiative, my suggestion back then is for the Chief Minister to be the chair of that committee. It was brought up by one of our panel just now. I forgot. Maybe it was whoever it is. I think it was WWF that says that the problem with environment issues is that in Sabah is that there's a lot of agencies that oversees all these things that has a say in the solutions to the problem that we have. Natural Resource Act Committee is one of them. Then you got the Environment Department, you got Fishery, and then you got so many others that can and need to be involved to resolve the problem that we face right now. So while if we were to move forward as a society, as a state, as a leader in this field, which I'm proud to say that Sabah is among the top performing states when it comes to environment issues, we need to engage the government of the day, the Chief Minister especially, to plead to him to sit as the chair of the the Blue Ocean Initiative, and to call upon the meetings not only with the government sectors, but to involve all the NGOs and community leaders into that committee. Now, he doesn't need to run the day by day. He can assign a executive office or whatever, or a co-chair or a deputy chair that has the passion. That is very much important, the passion to see this through. Only when we ourselves look into this, go into all this, we clean up our own act, that we can go the next step as inviting our neighbors to join us. Compared to our neighbors, I think we are doing a very good job. I'm glad to say, or maybe I'm biased, but I think that we are ahead in a lot of issues when it comes to environment protections. Efforts has been done previously, but I think more has to be done. Working along with our neighbors, something like Brunei, Brunei, Philippines, Indonesia, or China, or whoever it is, it's a big picture. So let us first get our bases right, concentrate on what we can do, and let that convince the national level to move forward with that. Is that a good answer for you?
Yeah, that's great, Dato'. Thank you for your response. Um, this is to Ashura. Perhaps because a lot of people texted me asking Dr. Ashura to perhaps share more about this alliance that you are leading. It's an NGO. Um, it's I was made to understand that it is like a group of NGOs, right, working together to preserve the environment. Is it in the South China Sea? So the question here is when we want to raise awareness about what's happening in the South China Sea, um, what is the proper mechanism that we have to come up with, and how do we go about it to bring this to the level where people can really understand what's happening there? Because uh, our main aim here is to get people to understand the damage that we see in the South China Sea, but we also want uh, the NGO like what is uh, the kind of NGO that Dr. Ashura is leading. What do we need to do more? How do we go about it? And where do we start? Dr. Ashura.
Thanks so much, Dr. Arnold. It's a huge question.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I think the main crux of your question is really how can we get environmental issues to reach such a high level in terms of
Yeah.
policy setting,
Yeah.
especially in our regional environment. I
Mm.
think there are two ways we can go about this. The first is in really trying to encourage awareness, and the second is also in, I think as Shantini alluded to this earlier, cultivating accountability. So in terms of encouraging awareness, I think we need to try to prioritize environmental issues, be it IUU fishing or plastic pollution, as a serious social economic issue that needs to be separated away, as we mentioned, from any geopolitical implications, anything to do with strategy, the regional strategy, security wise. This is because we're able to then gain the support and the lobbying of key policymakers. We're able to get enough funds that we need for a strong campaign in order to raise awareness on these issues. These campaigns will be able to appear in your usual media, your social media, or be it your TV, or be it the billboard that you're stuck in traffic and you're looking at. These are several grassroots methods to securitize a particular issue. I think it's also important to really cultivate multi-stakeholder settings. This is one of them, for example, where we're including, people that have been in the policy world and also with NGOs. And I have held several workshops where we include stakeholders, not just from the government, but also from the shipping industry, from civil society, from the academic institutions as well, to really all come together in one room to really talk about the same issue. And so you're able to learn from different angles. And most often than not, there is a lot of red tape and bureaucracy that prevents such a fluid communication between departments. And so by getting these settings into more informal settings, we're able to get more communication ahead and have it more fluidly developed and build policies on immediate personal relationships and what we call here in Southeast Asia WhatsApp diplomacy, for example. Um, Also, um, I think that there are issues in terms of governance. For example, there is the transitional body that's taking place in Marawi in South Philippines, for example. And these new states that want to develop new entities need to also develop with the consciousness of the maritime environment. So include it at such an early stage to bring in these issues on plastic pollution and IU fishing in education syllabus, put it in the primary and secondary school syllabus as well, and really make it part of the community outreach programs that we implement in when we work with our coastal societies. Datuk Pa mentioned, for example, the real problem of how we can offer a real alternative to these coastal communities. And so obviously this will need more government support as we try to lure them away from these illegal fishing practices. I spoke to a few departments across Borneo on fishery departments, and I spoke about, and they shared, some problems that they have in engaging with the public. A lot of which is just goes down to the fact that there is just a lack of basic knowledge on when they have missed the deadline of renewing their licenses. When do they know they have entered into the wrong territory, the wrong maritime zone with their fishing vessels? How they can identify species that have been protected, and when they have accidentally caught them as bycatch, for example. And so more communication engagement is needed, more training, more on the hands between the authorities and also the community. This brings you back to encouraging more accountability within the coastal communities. Malaysia is great in some community policing methods that they have implemented before. And there's also that reporting app where if the coastal community sees something quite dodgy happening at sea, they can take a picture and immediately it reaches the authority. And so you bypass this whole bureaucracy and red tape. And I think that's really important to ensure there's quick access between the coastal communities and also enforcement assets. At the end of the day, as Shantini mentioned, it all boils down to accountability at the coastal grassroots level. This is where Gaia comes in, where we hope to really get the coastal community and also people really in general to really start thinking about their role and responsibility in shaping global stability and global peace. You don't have to go far, just go to your beach and look at what's happening, and should already inculcate you with a sense of accountability. We do work with other organizations, but at the same time, we also work with other stakeholders in the region, uh, Coast Guards, for example, and even the Defense Ministry. And we also work with think tanks where we really hope to bring this multi-stakeholder agenda platform to publications so it can be distributed a lot more widely across the arena. And because we are so informal as an NGO, people are more willing to talk to us. And so the findings that we get are actually quite unique. I can talk to you later a bit more about IU fishing policies in the Borneo island that we have compiled on our upcoming policy paper. But yeah, keep in touch and follow our developments.
And Ashura, what's your thought on the issue of fish bombing mentioned by Dr. Pang just now? Issue of fish bombing and also try to link it with the livelihood of the coastal community or the fishermen. So
Yeah.
how do we tell them about the danger of fish bombing, and how do we encourage them to subscribe to a more sustainable fishing approach, things like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, we all know that fish bombing is extremely dangerous, not just for your life, because you're literally standing there right next to a explosive device, but also for the environment. Um, but I think that, at the end of the day, people need livelihood. And if they cannot resort to legitimate practices, obviously they would resort to the cheaper, more affordable, albeit illegal practices. And so, as I mentioned, first and foremost, it all boils down to awareness, to the realization that to know when you are using unregulated fishing nets, to know when you're using equipment that should not be used at sea. But also this needs to be complemented with support. There needs to be more governance infrastructure to be able to support programs that will be able to help these communities graduate and move on to more legitimate avenues. So obviously this would include having a certain fund for them for a particular length in time while they learn a new skill, or that Pang mentioned, for example, fish farming skills. But this, at the end of the day, is easier said than done. We're just sitting here talking, but people are actually affected. There was this case in Bangladesh, for example, where we had the government implement a closed fishing zone, a closed fishing season for a certain period of time, so that you could protect your environment and encourage fish to once again spawn. But this affected the coastal community, the artisanal fishing community, so badly that they actually suffered from a severe gap in livelihood, and this actually led to more protests. This is despite the fact that the government had already provided them support to weather them through this, closed fishing season. And what more, although the Bangladesh zone was closed to their own community, that fishing zone was still afflicted by foreign fishing vessels that came in anyway, and fished the fish despite this closed fishing season. This is because Bangladesh obviously has limited enforcement capabilities. So we will be faced with these very basic obstacles, but this should not deter us from actually attempting to address this problem.
Okay. So it looks like the Tupang wanted to respond on that fish bombing just now, but
Sorry.
wait for a while, Dato. I need to check our Facebook if there is any question from our participants. So our participants who are following us live, you are free to to post any question to our panel members. Are there any question? Priscilla, are there any question from our participants?
None so far.
Or we let Dato Pang to respond to that issue of fish bombing, Dato, if you want.
Okay.
For a different perspective.
Okay. Actually, just now I was just fooling around with my phone because I got several incoming calls that disengaged me from my attention. Anyway, no, when it comes to fish bombing and all this, like what everybody, most of our panel knows that anything, the issue at hand is multiple facet. I mean, there's a couple of angles that you have to address simultaneously to address the problem. On one hand, in the case of fish bombing, like one hand, you have to have the right stick to be put in place. You have to have the right enforcer to be there to implement all the laws. But at the same time, you have the other side where you have to think of the livelihood of the community that is affected by all this restrictions. And then on that hand, when we are encouraging people to do fish farming, the other side is that we have to create the demand for the produce that they put onto the market. You know, people tends to love seafood that is from breed in the nature because they, in their mind, is more tasty or whatever it is. So we have to also shift that focus to them, saying that okay, while psychologically you think that certain feed tastes better and things like that, but by opting for a sustainable farm fish, you'll be helping the environment overall. So overall, will help to drive demand for fish that is farmed. Okay, and that will ensure that they will receive good price for this fish, good price at first demand. So it's a problem that has to be tackled from all fronts, just not from enforcement, just not in terms of supplies, but you also have to look at it from the demand side. Same goes with fishing. If we can produce enough fish farm to satisfy our guests, our people who we gear towards selecting farm fish other than ocean fish, then the demand for fish from the ocean is going to go down, and that will decrease the pressure and will give a chance for the ocean to recover by itself. So it is a multifaceted kind of a problem. We didn't talk enough about rubbish that have been dumped, plastics. That is one of the main polluter that is happening right now. I think the issue on plastic has gained world attention because of the damage that it has caused to the fisheries and also to the environment, to turtle especially. It's the same approach has to be implemented to encourage our people or to discourage them from throwing rubbish. You know, you can look at Pulau Gaya. Okay, look at Pulau Gaya. These people, if you go on a low tide day, you see the whole the whole front is full of rubbish, and most of it is plastic. But what is the government doing about it? You can point fingers saying that hey, you guys throw rubbish, this and that. But what is the government doing to provide a way for them to dispose of the garbage? Are we giving incentive or maybe educate them in proper management of the rubbish? Do we have enough rubbish bin there? A program, it's not easy to get people to change their habits of throwing rubbish, you know, but maybe we can motivate them in such a way that, okay, the NGOs with the help of the government, or I remember last time there used to be a fund that is to collect money from buying a plastic bag from supermarket. This fund can be used as for a start while we slowly educate the younger generations. It takes one generation to change the mindset. So it takes a long time. It doesn't. You just can't flip your finger and say it's that. Maybe we can implement a program, something like we buy garbage from them. So we don't give them money. We exchange them for points that give some basic foods like rice or whatever. You know, you collect 10 tons of garbage for the next couple of months, whatever months. If you reach certain points, we give you certain incentive, right, rice, Maggi mee, something that is
So
that,
so it's not
that can produce them.
so it's not just about saying no to the use of plastic bag, Dato, or to prevent.
No, it's much more than that. It's
Yeah,
easy
much
to
more
say
than
no.
that. As
Yeah.
mentioned by Shantini, it's also important to regulate the use of plastic bag. It's not just to say totally no to plastic bag.
Yeah.
I want to bring Dato. You want to say something?
Oh yeah, I would just want to unless you can come up with a substitute for rubbish for garbage plastic that is so cheaper, then it's a problem that is going to be here for. I'm sorry to say, it's going to be here for quite a while, So unless you can get people to use cloth bag, you give out them free, encourage them to use that. But the problem of plastic bag is going to be here for quite a while more.
Yeah. So well, to all of the panel members, I kind of want to bring this discussion to the regional level, because there's one question here. Maybe Ashura or Shantini can answer this question, or even Dr. Pang. It's a question of the role of foreign entities in polluting the South China Sea. Perhaps Ashura and Shantini can give us can elaborate more in terms of the roles of these foreign entities in the environmental pollution in the South China Sea. Yeah, the role of foreign entities. Shantini, would you like to respond to this question?
Hi.
Yeah.
So the role of foreign entities,
Yes.
So now it depends what you mean by foreign entities here. So again, like what Dato' Pang is emphasizing, regulation and the stick is something that doesn't always work. The carrot is what works. So if you look across the region at the moment, you look at the Southeast Asian region, when it comes to, for example, plastics, there's a lot of funding that is coming in from the Swedish government, the German government entities, or other foreign-based funding bodies that are actually funding UN-based programs to convert our linear plastics economy into a circular economy. So they're using the carrot approach, and in so doing, it's not just them giving money, it's them actually giving the opportunity for a project development which will include capacity building, which will address behavior change, is what Dr. Pang was saying. So these mechanisms are more impactful, because one thing that we know about the ASEAN nations, they have a very strong sense of solidarity. They have very high level of awareness with respect to their sovereign rights and sovereignty in terms of governance. So it is not it is not something that I feel personally that will fall subject to foreign scrutiny, but this programmatic approach suits the diplomacy of this region and has been shown to be quite impactful. I mean, this is just addressing present pollution issues. If you're looking at issues of illegal fishing and so forth, we have seen like how trade barriers can create change. For instance, in Malaysia, there was the World Trade Organization turtle shrimp issue, where shrimp was being caught and turtles were accidentally being caught as well. And also with respect to the Thai fishing fleets, of them getting a yellow or a red card with respect to IUU, and how then that creates pressure for change towards sustainable practices. So trade-related sanctions, or the threat of trade-related sanctions, have also worked. So these are just some of the so-called stick or carrot approaches that have been employed in the past from outside influences. I don't know, maybe Dr. Azura might have some things to add.
Dr. Ashura?
Yeah, sure. If I could take a different angle to this question, and really complement what what Shantini has been saying. I think that, when we talk about illegal fishing and plastic pollution, these are both in maritime environmental issues, but they are quite different in a sense that illegal fishing requires exploiting resources that are at sea, and marine pollution is rather, contributing artificial elements, as Shantini mentioned, to the sea. So they're quite different in that respect. And so I would caution anyone into trying to really question the role of foreign entities in contributing to these two different maritime environmental issues. And so I think that the approach that have been taken in my limited knowledge towards plastic pollution is actually been quite well thought out. And it requires, it involves the role of foreign entities as not as a contributor to this problem, but rather in trying to alleviate it and to work with the region to better understanding how we can manage plastic pollution. And if only IUU fishing would also take a similar approach, that would be great. We are obviously unable to trace the source of the plastic that we find at sea. And so I would caution anyone against trying to point fingers at any particular foreign entity which you feel may have contributed to marine pollution. This is yet again, we cannot situate it within a geopolitical context. This needs to be dealt as the region is already heading towards when managing plastic pollution. Yeah, that's it for me.
Don't you think, you mentioned about the geopolitical issue, right, Dr. Aishwarya? There is this perception saying that basically the issue of geopolitical conflict is also at play here, and also the reason why it is quite difficult for the enforcement of international law in preventing the concerned countries from protecting the maritime environment in the South China Sea together. Don't you think that is the case?
Oh, definitely. And I think that's the problem as well. Because, when we talk about fish, it's our food, it's a basic necessity. It's not something that should be at the behest of, major power competition at sea. Unfortunately, this is the exact direction that we're heading towards. A lot of the demand for food security and for seafood have actually pushed more and more fishermen out to sea and into the high seas to try venture for more fish to support their own income. And in fact, therefore entering into other countries' EEZ. But this is seen as a violation of territorial sovereignty, and it cannot be seen in that respect. In fact, we need to go to the very root of it. This is the case primarily because there are of land-based factors, which is not enough money to sustain these coastal communities, and so therefore they have to venture into another country's traditional fishing grounds. And this is on the regional level, but if you were to go on the national level as well, this problem exists as well, where either the Coast Guard or the Navy, because of the way IUU fishing has been constructed in the regional narrative that surrounds it, the Coast Guard and the Navy are unsure on how to respond to this. And so the Navy, which is very focused on defending territorial sovereignty, feels that fishermen entering into foreign territory is an invasion of national security. But the Coast Guard is here to protect your maritime environment. And so they're like, oh, but they are exploiting our fish. And we just need to tell them to back off and say, oh, by the way, I know you're looking for more income, but this is actually our area. And so I think it is absolutely important for us to reconstruct the narrative around IUU fishing and to separate it from any geopolitical implications, when the solution isn't in the Coast Guard, it isn't in the Navy, but it's in us. It's how the other stakeholders, the whole of society, work towards recognizing the fact that coastal communities need more support because of the declining rate of fish stocks, full stop, not because of the United States and China trying to compete over the sea lanes of communication. So yeah, I think geopolitical issues definitely play a role, but this is something we need to actively move the conversation away from.
Okay. So it's not just about talking about the conflict or the dispute, it's about working together to protect the environment in the South China Sea. Dr. Pang, would you like to comment on that discussion on that issue?
Okay. I think everybody
to the regional perspective now.
Yeah. I think everybody here agrees that the environment issue is not a regional issue, or it's not localized to one nation, or it's a global issue. So in terms of when there is a lot of, like what I think was it Ashanti was saying, that there is a lot of funds out there that is going around helping out any nations that wants to tap into this fund to alleviate or to control the environment problem, especially like plastic. Certain bodies or certain segment of the nation view this negatively, saying that, oh, why are we bringing all these things in? Why the matsale or the kwailo is coming and teach us or doing this, doing that? I think that is the wrong mentality. I think the right mentality here is to think of our environment as a global issue. The plastic issue is a global issue. We as Malaysian, we as Sabahan, we are now a developing state whereby the fundamentals like food security is our needs, our basic needs that we are trying to ensure that everybody in Sabah gets the right amount, get to be elevated from poverty. So not much attention or not much financing is given to bigger issues. Environment is a bigger issue. So that's why you see the government not allocating a lot of money to all these programs that protect the environment. So we should be open as a state. We should be open when friends around the world wants to help us. If they want to help us to clean up our backyard, what's wrong with it? I don't see anything wrong with it. It's not that they're going to come in and say, oh, this backyard now is mine. If they want to give us help us in terms of buying a ship that can collect rubbish in the sea or shore, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, we should welcome this. There is a lot of things that NGOs right now, especially in Sabah, is heading on the right directions. They're getting a lot of international helps, and the government, I think, is in a right mindset, allowing them to go out internationally to seek for fund to help us to conserve not only our environment but also our biosystem on land and at sea. So to assist or to, let's say, to enhance this situation, I would like to see the government of the day take a more proactive stand, whereby the chief minister, if he is agreeable, he can put up a says that I'm really for the environment. I will assist anybody. I will instruct all my departments to help everybody in the environment departments, anybody who wants to safeguard the environment in Sabah, the NGOs, anybody, we will assist you all. We have constant dialogue with you. Like what I think Azura was saying, that dialogue is very important. Dialogue is very important. Things get done, like in business, things get done in the golf course more than they do in the office. So this kind of thing should be happening, and we encourage this kind of things to happen more frequently. No doubt, the government is very set in its way to develop Sabah and to eradicate poverty, to provide enough jobs for everybody. But in Sabah, you have a group of people like our guest panelists here who are very dedicated to environment, who are willing to put their heart and soul and their efforts to help Sabah to be environmentally sustainable, which in turns will enhance tourism, which is one of the main income for Sabah. You look at the economy of Sabah right now, it's suffering because tourism is almost dead. And Sabah tourism relies heavily on the environment, the ecosystems. So the government should take a very proactive stance to be more vocal when it comes to environment issues. I'm sorry to say that they are doing something about it. They are being vocal about it, but they are not. They should be more vocal and take a more active role in the environment issue. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Pang. Is there any question from our participants that you would like to pose to the panel members? I will check our Facebook to see if there's any question or comment. No questions? Are you all sure? Question from the panel members to each other, perhaps, if there are any, or comments before we end our forum this afternoon. I give the opportunity to everyone. So if Dr. Pang has any question to Ashura, Ashura has any question to Shantini, so we are free to discuss. Yeah, is that you, Ashura? You raise your hand.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I actually have a question to Shantini. I think that it's really important that plastic pollution is a topic that we're increasingly focused on. I mentioned earlier that a lot of the emphasis was on territorial disputes, and not enough has been looked at overfishing. But that now that IUU fishing is entering the spotlight, albeit in the wrong direction, I'm glad that we are generating more thought on plastic pollution as well. And in fact, that is something that I think the conversation needs to move more actively towards. A few questions. The first question is that if you mentioned a really interesting statistic by RSIS on the how often maritime environmental issues are being managed. If you could just still share with us the statistic again, because I kind of missed out on it. Secondly, what are your observations on civil society levels of engagement in trying to tackle specifically plastic pollution in the region, in Borneo especially, but also in other parts of Southeast Asia? Do you know of any initiatives? Thank you.
Thank you, Ashura. Shantini?
Hi, I'm so sorry, Dr. Azura. I got your first part of the question, but your second part was with respect to initiatives relating to
Civil society.
in this region. Okay, sure. Thank you, Dr. Azura. So the first question, it's a paper which I'm more than happy to share with you once I get your email address. It's actually a study that was done in 2 parts by RSIS on the frequency of reporting.
It's
Yes.
RSIS, right? Is it?
Yes. Yes, RSIS.
Is it marine environmental protection in the South China Sea, challenges and prospect, part 1?
Yes, that's right. Well done.
One?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, there are 2 parts, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the one I'm referring to is in part 1. So I think it said something like 8,000 over, right? Yeah, over 8,000 reports or articles were published with respect to conflict in South China Sea, and less than 50, I think it was 25, with respect to environmental issues in the South China Sea. So that was just something that was captured in that report, and I found it quite fascinating over a 5-year, 2009 to 2016 timeframe. Now, with respect to your second question on initiatives at the grassroots level to address marine plastic pollution, I believe there are a lot of initiatives already underway by so many civil societies. Like I can name a few from Malaysia, like the Zero Waste Malaysia, there's Reef Check in Malaysia, there's Trash Hero. So they are doing a lot of projects with coastal communities. Some are looking towards turning waste into wealth initiatives. Some are working on awareness programs. For WWF as a whole, we have several programs. One is centered upon education. So we run programs with eco schools on building awareness along a range of environmental issues, which does also include plastics. Second, we are also working with businesses with respect to raising awareness and collaborating on the circular economy approach. And third is also, this initiative is not present in Malaysia per se, but it's, I think, present in several Southeast Asian countries. It's called the Plastics Smart Cities Initiative. So it's working with local governments, because a lot of actions, be it SDGs or any commitments, it needs to be localized at the local level, at the grassroots level with local authorities. And hence the initiatives are aligned towards co-creating solutions on the ground to make it easy to identify waste segregation issues, B, shifting resource use, and also C is sustainable consumption practices. So those are just some of the regional based initiatives. At the global level, we develop tools with respect to with other partners in trying to identify and monitor and study how plastics move throughout the ecosystems. We also have initiatives across the globe with coastal communities on trying to eradicate the problem of ghost gears. So there's a huge range of initiatives, and there's no one size fits all in terms of addressing these problems. We also do notice that some coastal communities may have a higher dependency rate on plastic use, for instance, than others. And some coastal communities are actually encountering, like, for example, like, I think Dr. Pang alluded to the issue of how Pulau Gaya, for example, has a lot of plastics, but it's highly probable that those plastics are not occurring from that island alone, is being carried across. But a lot of islands have problems with respect to waste management issues. Facilities are not there in a lot of islands in this region. So it's working towards addressing all those problems across the plastics life cycle. And it's not just a waste management issue. It's also trying to work with like civil societies and also technology hubs or think tanks with respect to innovation. How can we innovate so that we can find a solution to the problem? So if you are interested in a particular area that we are working on, I'm more than happy to share further later. No problem. Thanks.
Thank you, Santini. Okay, there are no more questions. Let me check. Are there any questions from our participants? Perhaps one more question before we close our forum. We are running out of time.
All right, maybe I'll pose a question.
Oh yeah, you
to
have.
Yeah, I'll pose a question to all the panel members.
Sure.
So we have the Coral Triangle Initiative for the Sulu Sulawesi Sea. So we have Kudat, Sipadan, and Namik. For example, I think Dr. Sorry?
The triangle, what is that again?
Coral Triangle Initiative. 6 countries come together to develop a conservation-based approach to collectively protecting the highest biodiverse region, marine biodiverse region in the world, which is in the tropical waters of 6 countries: Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, and Timor-Leste. So this initiative this is what has given rise to a lot of the conservation measures that are also being developed in Sabah, and also I think the Turtle Island Heritage. And I think more of the transboundary measures and collaborations are being developed. There are also fisheries-based activities which are being held together with local communities. Now, that there have been studies to indicate that the South China Sea is equally mega biodiverse. Do you think such a mechanism can ever be developed for the South China Sea? Will it happen, or should it happen? That's my question.
So who wants to answer first? Dato.
Let me answer that first. In my humble opinion, I think it will be easier to manage the Coral Triangle than South China Sea. Because when it comes to South China Sea, you got some superpower, some very some heavyweights that kind of set in the ways, or they likes to do things a certain way. Whereas the Coral Triangle, which I believe is, you're right, is one of the most, if not the most precious ecosystem that we have around in this world. I think that will be easier to concentrate, because that initiative has been there for a long time. There have been some positive development on that end, but I would not bring it to say that it has been very successful. I think effort still needs to be done there. And on Sabah part, I think we should do more to along that initiative. Like I always advocate for this. Back then, when I was many years ago, about 10 years ago, I was always wanting the ministry to look at what they call the mini barrier reef. You know, the reef that covers along the eastern border of Sabah, you know, the waters border of Sabah. There's this reef that goes down right into Indonesia. Likitan, is it Likitan? I forgot. Yeah, I think it's Likitan. Correct me if I'm wrong. The islands that is south of Mabul. No, sorry, east of Mabul. There's a nice coral reef along that stretch that not much attention has been given to that area. And over the years, fish bombing has been there's a lot of fish bombing in that areas that has pretty much destroyed a lot of the corals there. I would like to see for the next for couple of years, the government to enlarge Sepadan Conservation Area, Marine Park, to include those areas. I think that is something that we can do on our side. For South China Sea, I think we can play a small part, but I think the national stage has to be more aggressive on this front. Discussion at this level, we can only do what is good, what is within our realms that we can do to assist, but the interest must come from the national level, and I think that will be, I foresee that to be quite a tough challenge to head on.
Thank you, Dato. Ashura?
Yeah, I think that's a really pertinent question, and I only wish that we had addressed that question a bit earlier in our discussion. I think that it's you know, ASEAN, as you know, we've got a lot of claimant states currently embroiled in the South China Sea dispute, and I think having such an grouping, I wouldn't say an organization, that would focuses on conservation issues within the South China Sea could potentially be a good mechanism that most claimant states would advocate for and would throw their support behind, especially if most of these solutions are research-based. In fact, we already have the arm for this. We have CEFDAC in Manila that produces a lot of research, but most often this research mostly stays within academia. It's quite hard for it to enter the policy circle. And so I think that in moving forward, if we're able to establish such a potential initiative, we're able to encourage claimant states to really build cooperation and also trust by working together on these low-hanging fruits, be it plastic pollution, be it IUU fishing, or even basic drug trafficking. In fact, these are some areas that Brunei as ASEAN chair highlighted as potential areas that they would like to pursue moving forward. Despite Brunei themselves being a claimant state to the South China Sea dispute, there are several mechanisms that already exist in terms of collaborating. ASEAN working groups are there. There's also the ASEAN Maritime Forum, for example, to raise awareness on this. AMF already works with CEFDAC. So if we're able to pull in these organizations to build a very loose, informal, collaborative grouping on the South China Sea would be helpful. But yet again, as Datuk Pang highlighted, to talk about the South China Sea, to just say the term is very highly securitized and militarized as it is. But that should not dissuade us from working on areas within the South China Sea. We have the Natuna Sea, we have the Java Sea, we have several straits that we can work on. And as also mentioned, several the thin lining of the coral reef. And these are what you would call minilateral groupings. The TCA, which was set up between, the Sulu-Sulawesi Seas, is a good example of a security-oriented initiative. But why can't we have a minilateral grouping that's also focused more on conservation? So I think it's a definitely good idea for us to start looking towards a broader grouping. We don't have an RFMO within the region. And if that is a step that we can take towards a broader regional fishery management organization, I think that is definitely something that we should pursue.
Okay. Thank you, Ashura. Well, it's already 4 p.m. I think it's time for us to end this forum. It has been a very intellectually engaging and very interesting forum. On behalf of SEEDS, once again, I would like to thank Dr. Ashura, Dr. Pang, and Shantini. Thank you very much for your participation. And of course, at SEEDS, we are in the process of conducting more awareness campaign in order to tell the people about the environmental pollution in the South China Sea. We are doing that. We will keep in touch. We will let you all know if, for instance, your role is very much needed, especially in advising us what to see and how to do it and things like that. So thank you very much once again to all of the panel members. It's a good forum, so we have learned a lot. I'm sure our participants outside are also learning a lot from our discussion this afternoon. Well, Azwan, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you to Dr. Arnold. Thank you, Dr. Arnold, and the panelists today. Well done. That was one informational and interesting forum just now. Ladies and gentlemen, now we have come towards the end of the program. Indeed, many issues were discussed and highlighted. I would just like to remind everyone to fill in the evaluation form that is available via the link in the comment sections. We would like to wish many thanks to our panel today for participating, as well as the audience, wherever you guys are. Before we end, I would like to invite the members to a Zoom photo session. Please look into the camera. Is Dr. Asri here?
Unfortunately, Shantini's camera is not working.
Okay, what about Dr. Asri?
Where is he?
Is he coming in?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
What should we do? Just smile.
yeah, just look at the camera.
Okay.
And smile. And the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, very good, everyone. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we reach the end of the program. Stay safe, everyone. Please ensure to follow the SOP for safety purposes. To keep updated with Seeds, please follow and like us via our Facebook and Instagram accounts. Wherever you are, let's meet once again in the future. I'm Azwan, wishing you guys a wonderful day ahead. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
See you all again. Bye.